$8 in one single day. If you go to Starbucks, you get simply 3 ounces.
Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. Seeing it. Let me welcome all in the room and on Zoom. We are going to return to our customary meeting process. If you have a question on the topic being discussed, please raise your hand both in the room and on Zoom. On Zoom, you will find the raise your hand symbol by clicking on the reactions tab on the taskbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions should be 1 minute and please be questions. IT will help us identify raised hands on Zoom. We'll be closing the chat in about 5 minutes. If you have not registered to make a public comment this evening and would like to do so, please post a request in chat now. First order of business. Minutes were sent to all board members last week. May I have a motion to approve them, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, those minutes are approved. We next like to move to the public safety report. Lieutenant Jaton is with us this evening and is making tonight's report.
Good evening, everyone. Before I get into the public safety report, I do have a message from Lori Nichols, who was
Can we ask you to move to the middle so that we are? Thank you very much.
We're talking about.
Have a seat at the table.
Come up to the stand. Okay, yes, I can do that. Good evening, everyone. I first have a statement from Lori Nichols, who was unable to join us this evening. And I'm going to read that because I don't have it memorized. It says, hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and looking forward to the upcoming 32-acre town hall. Staff from CSUCI's Site Authority, Facility Services, and Public Safety teams will be present, as well as a representative from the 32-acre developer, Kennedy Wilson. We are in process of preparing the presentations and the Q&A session. Our goal is to provide information and updates on the project and answer as many of your questions as possible. I encourage you to submit questions ahead of time for consideration. Please send them to 32acres@csuci.edu. That's 32acres@csuci.edu. Spread the word. The event will take place on Saturday, December 4th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. at the southwest corner of the University Glen Community Park. Attendees will be asked to check in and provide their name and phone number for contact tracing purposes only. We hope to see you there. That's from Lori. As for the public safety report this evening, I have a few things to report on. As you know, or you should know, we've had a few mountain lion sightings in the community. And I know I've seen posts on Facebook and some of the other social media feeds. The mountain lion's been seen a number of times, very close to the community. In fact, the last time it was the 700 block of Channel Islands Drive, and it made its way across Tyler Harbor. I can only ask, I must stress that in all of these instances, we have not gotten the report until 20 to 30 minutes after the sighting, which makes it difficult for us to confirm what's going on and get the message out in a timely manner. So I would ask that if anyone sees the mountain lion, I'm sure he's around, there's a lot of deer in the area right now. If you see the mountain lion, please contact the police department as soon as possible or dial 911, and we'll get units out there to help and assist. Okay. I also will talk briefly about the police response, which happened on Monday. I know there's questions related to the police response that happened on Monday. For those of you that did not receive the information alert that went out after the fact. There was a subject pointing a perceived firearm at passing vehicles on Potrero Road, and our officers responded, and a vehicle pursuit ensued of that vehicle. The pursuit initially went away from campus at University Glen, and so no notifications went out, as it wasn't impacting our community directly. But as the pursuit came back to Potrero Road and back towards the south side of the main campus on Potrero, an emergency notification went out because the vehicle had stopped. So the vehicle stopped, the officers were in a confrontation there trying to get the suspect under control. And in that moment, an alert was sent out using the university's loudspeaker system, trying to get people to stay out of the area. We were also in the process of putting out a CI alert that everyone would have gotten, everyone regardless of being on campus. However, the officers were able to successfully take the subject into custody without incident, eliminating the threat, at which point it was no longer necessary to put out that alert. And so we simply updated the folks on campus via the loudspeaker system, and then a follow-up message came out later in the evening. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Got one. The campus loudspeaker system, is that only inside the buildings, or is there some speaker outside?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I don't have the exact number, but it actually turns on all of our speakers in open public spaces outside, as well as all of our university phone lines get activated.
So would we hear that at all from any part of this community?
Possibly from the town center. It's not.
That's all right. I'm just curious. I think we're used to relying upon the CI alerts. So.
The CI alerts, like I said, would come. The loudspeaker system is used as our very initial, just get something out as quickly as possible. But the alert system takes a little bit of time because you have to log into the system and you have to write out the messaging. And that was in progress, and in fact would have come out except that the subject was taken into custody.
You said perceived firearm. I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Did he not have a firearm?
No, he ended up having a rifle, but it was an airsoft pellet gun rifle that looked like a real rifle. Yes.
Thank you.
Some of the response to the series of things that happened in the last couple of weeks have indicated to me that potentially not everybody in the community is signed up for CI alerts. And although UCAM puts that message at the bottom of every e-blast, or at least their monthly e-blast, I wonder if you guys could help us craft a message to explain how to do it again in a little more detail, and explain to those of us who did it years ago and might like to go and update. We're so well covered in our household that we get 5 phone calls when this happens. And so we're wasting resources and we need to go update. But I don't remember my password, and I don't know how to deal with the fact that I don't remember my password.
And I don't know the answer to updates, but I will tell you that the University Glen website in the news section has the information there on how to register and log in to update your emergency notification settings. So you should be able to access it from that area. We can certainly send some more messaging out about how to do that. You will note also that I log into that University Glen website. We've also posted the mountain lion alerts as a banner on that website as well. And so we will continue to do that. That just doesn't happen immediately, right? That's a little bit later before I can get those things done.
So what is your protocol for events that, like the mountain lion sighting, or maybe the guy with the gun, where you get a call and you may not be able to observe what was reported? So what do you guys do?
Yeah, so the dispatcher is going to ask us a lot of questions,
right?
Try to determine exactly what was seen, right? If it's a mountain lion, for example, how big was it? Where exactly was it? What was it doing? Was it walking away from the community? Was it coming towards the community? And we evaluate based on the reporting party statements, whether or not we believe that a mountain lion, it was a confirmed sighting of a mountain lion, whether or not we see the mountain lion.
Right, okay.
But we'll evaluate the circumstances, and we know that there's a mountain lion in the area right now, right? And so as soon as we have a confirmed sighting, officers will respond out. They're going to do additional checks. They'll notify their administrator on call, which is going to be me, and then we will start working with the chief to get out additional information.
Okay, so I guess to get more specific, so at what point, like in the mountain lion sighting situation, do you say, okay, we've got a credible threat, we're going to go to CI alert and post this? I mean, can you do it over the phone with the person reporting it?
No, it's as soon as practicable. So dispatchers all have the ability to push out that emergency alert.
Right.
But we will wait until we have established that we believe that there's a confirmed sighting of a mountain.
So in this case, does a patrol car go out and meet the person who reported it?
And they certainly will.
And check the veracity of it?
Who reported it, but if the dispatcher has enough information to suggest that there's a mountain lion sighting confirmed, we can push that alert while the officers are responding. So it just depends on the circumstances of each individual.
Yeah, okay, I guess what I'm asking is maybe with things that are kind of urgent, like the mountain lion thing, whether you can shorten the verification timeline, say, look, set your criteria such that if you get a call in and it's someone who's identified themselves, they're credibly describing the situation, that you can send an alert out. Maybe it's cautioned or couched in it's been reported that, or in some way, kind of shorten that timeline.
Yeah, the alerts will go out as soon as possible. Again, the reason for the delay in the last two alerts is because we were not called for 20 to 30 minutes
Okay.
until after.
So that's a different matter. Okay, I'll leave it alone, but hopefully you understand my point. There's a trade-off between,
Yeah, keep in mind that alert's going to both university land and every individual student and employee on campus.
Right. Okay.
I have a two-part question. One is the mountain lion is known to be in the area. There's only one, P90 or something. Can we, it has a GPS on it. Do we have a house on it?
The mountain lion that's been reported is not a chipped lion.
Is not a lion. My second question is, what is it? What is the plan to deal with this lion? Is it, do you have tranquilizer guns, or would you kill it, or?
No, so these are just sightings. Unless it's immediately threatening public safety, we wouldn't be doing anything exactly other than be standing by in the area and making sure everyone's okay. We work directly with the Department of Fish and Wildlife on each and every one of these sightings, and their biologists are working with us. So I would hope that they're getting enough reports from us that they're going to be in the area looking for this lion as well. They'll hopefully get it chipped, but I don't know that for a fact. That's another agency.
Okay, great, thank you.
One last question. So can you help the community members understand what kind of deterrent is available should they encounter either coyotes? We have that problem all the time. They get more aggressive, or mountain lion. And from what I've discovered is that there's no authorized pepper spray that you can use on a coyote. There is for a dog. That's what I understand. But can you ask wildlife if there's something we could buy if we're concerned about it, that we could use as a final, last ditch deterrent against the mountain lion?
Yeah, I would just say that the mountain lion one has not been aggressive towards any human.
Not yet.
Right. It's passive. We are living in a mountain lion habitat.
Understand?
And so I would just say we can put out the safety tips that we've stated on that Fish and Wildlife will tell us, and that's pretty much what they're going to tell us.
Okay. So then there is no approved spray, anything like that. There's air horns. Because
Loud noises, make yourself big, don't run. Yep.
All right. Okay.
And if anything else fails, bite back. Right.
Air spray, that's illegal, I suppose.
There's sprays illegal, where?
Against, using it against coyotes.
Yeah, I would, they said in the email, don't log at dusk or dawn. Be careful be prudent with where you put your
I
body.
understand.
Thank you so very much. Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Steve Offerman, are you online? Are we going to invite you? We will, but I promised Steve at 6:15, and it's 6:15. Steve Offerman, are you online? We see him logged in.
Can you speak closer to us? So I can do that. Is there a reason that you think sound closer to us?
Because this is the angle that fits everyone. And
Right.
so that's where the maximum is like that. What we can do is we can do it so that there's one person next to the speaker shows up. You know?
Well, I kind of want to see what's on chat. I was trying to pull it up on
Yeah,
that.
chat is not activated. If you want to make a
Okay.
comment, you raise your hand and then we'll acknowledge it, and at the time, and at that point, the person can make a comment.
Okay, because I saw stuff written in chat, that's why.
It was just, that was original, trying to figure out the audio.
Okay.
Steve Offerman, are you online? And you raise your hand if you're there. Well, let's move on to Brightview if we don't see Steve online. He was bringing us information about the redistricting effort. It appears that we're going to change county commissioners, county supervisors in the redistricting. Okay, so let's go to Brightview then. Scott, Eric, why don't we make them big if we can?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? All right, good. Sorry about that. It's a little echoey on my end, but thank you everybody for inviting us. Scott Godfrey, Regional Manager for Brightview. I'm happy to be part of the conversation tonight. We've got some general updates for you as to what the team and Eric has got going on right now. Overall, I think we're in a good spot as we head into the fall. We'll start transitioning from what we consider routine maintenance, the normal weeding, pruning, mowing, and start transitioning into some prep items that are going to have us ready to go for spring renovations, deep bed cleaning, overseeding in some areas. So things like that will really help us be ready for spring and have a successful summer next year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Lopez, our account manager. Eric will take us through some of the updates that he has going on right now. Eric, you want to go ahead and take it?
Can we highlight Eric?
He's on mute.
Eric, please unmute.
There he is. You're up.
Disconnect.
While we're waiting for him to connect, I have a question. When will tree trimming resume? Now you're on mute. I think you muted yourself. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep, I did unmute myself. Okay. Tree trimming will resume on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, pending maybe some potential close off issues. We might have to close down half of the roundabout, but the team will be, they're planning to be working. Sorry, I've got my notes right here. Sorry, I lost it. But yes, the team will be working there next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
And Jake, can we submit work orders for work? Okay, great.
Specifically, you guys.
There we go.
Perfect.
Will have visuals.
I have one question. What's that deep bed cleaning? What does that mean to you?
Apologies. It's really hard to hear you. What was that question?
What does deep bed cleaning
mean to you? You said you're gonna start doing it. What does that mean?
Oh, just, as we kind of get the bulk of the leaf debris down, they're staying on top of that right now. But as we transition through, just really get deep into the beds, make sure that we're pulling everything out, cleaning up, just really getting the beds clean as they kind of, it's tough to get in there during the course of the summertime, but really allow us to really focus in and get into the beds and really clean. Just a next level of cleaning.
So does that include the landscape and rosemary and things like that? Because what I see is there's lawn clippings and grass clippings that's blown into the rosemary and it hasn't been cleaned out for years. Under the lantana, the only person that's cleaned out from under there is me. Is that what deep bed cleaning means?
To the best of our ability, if it's a ground cover that's completely filling up the bed, it'd be a little bit difficult to get underneath the ground cover that's up in underneath there. But any of the open bed space, that's more or less, we want to get rid of the buildup. If there's a certain area, then we'll take a look at that, but it's more the covered ground cover. We wouldn't necessarily be going underneath that. Eric, are you?
I feel like no one ever threw the debris out from, put the debris in, never using it.
So Jake, if the owner thinks there's a unnecessary amount of debris, like my place years, I got a lot of those leaves, is a work order an appropriate way to get attention to that?
What I would do is I would send an email to us and simply address it. And have
But in theory, this is just an issue. You're dealing with Alice.
So you have to do it.
It's not being done properly, then you're coming down to work orders. That brings attention to it.
Okay, well, nobody has a question.
I would like to know, as I've asked each year for the last 5 years, why leaves are, why they are raked, blown into the street, blown back to the gutter, carried away in a truck. In areas where there are a lot of leaves, like the East Coast, everyone uses leaf vacuums. Why are we doing so much work? We have so many leaves, and raking and blowing and bumbling is just a waste of labor.
Do you have a comment on that, Scott?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. It's something that we have looked into because I've seen that. It's not something that's normally typically done on the West Coast, as you mentioned right there. It's a specific piece of equipment that we did look into purchasing, and it is definitely something that we want to look into. We've looked at doing other items like subcontracting out a street sweeper. Just unfortunately, from a financial standpoint, it hasn't panned out, but it is definitely something that we looked into. And if we are able to continue on with the contract, it may make sense for us to invest as we move forward with another 3-year contract. But it was something we have looked into, because I agree. I watch the guys out there with their blowers and everything.
Is there a reason why you can't rent one if you don't want to buy one? I mean, Brightway is a big company.
Don't you clean leaves in other areas? I mean, there's leaves everywhere.
My comment is, I reference the East Coast because I believe the East Coast of Canada has more leaves than anywhere in the world. But I see leaf vacuums at the mall in Thousand Oaks. I see leaf vacuums at America and Camarillo. I see leaf vacuums in Moore Park, Simi Valley, Beverly Hills. I don't think it's an unusual occurrence. I would just like to see it used to save labor so that we can get other things done. So thank you for looking at. Thank you.
No, and actually, to your point, the actual leaf vacuum, that's something absolutely no problem. We've got those actually on site, and apologies if we're not using one. We definitely should be. I was thinking more the vacuum truck that attaches to a dump truck and goes with the big hose that goes through there. But if we're not using the walk behind vacuums, absolutely, we're happy to invest in one of those. That should make it easier for the guys.
I will add to what you just said. We used to have a vacuum truck, and the problem that we had was there's so many residents parking on the street that they would just blow the leaf one side or the other, and it wasn't effective. So the vacuums are what I'm really suggesting, not to the point.
Makes sense. And that was exactly the point we ran into too. It was almost we were doing double work. So the great point.
Yeah, I saw big bundles of leaves being carried off this week, and I thought, that's not very efficient.
Thank you.
Good question.
I think Eric's online now. Maybe Eric, if you're able to, you want to go ahead and go through your updates?
Hello, can everybody hear me now?
We got you.
Awesome. So I wanted to quickly just go over a couple of projects that we've been working on. The very first is the dog park. So as Scott was mentioning, fall is a good time of the year to start seeding and fertilizing, and we are doing just that. We did that at the dog park, and we're seeing some progress. So we've applied the seed, we've applied the top dress, we've closed it off in that section so that we don't have any foot traffic coming in, and we'll continue to monitor that closely. Another project that we have going on is the expansion of the community garden. So there is a proposal in process, and we're going to be we're looking into installing some fencing there and prepping the area that was requested to be able to expand the garden a little bit more. We are also staying on top of the clocks. We're checking them and making sure that we toggle down the water as we all know it's starting to get colder. It's still a little warm, but we are expecting to get colder as we are getting closer to December. And we are setting up a proposal for any large repairs that's in the process. Regular maintenance items. So as Scott was mentioning, leaves, that's been a priority. It's always been a priority in the fall. And then going into the winter, we're going to be expecting the last amount of leaves that's going to be coming down. Right now, like I said, it's still pretty warm. So that's the reason why there's still some leaves that are hanging on there. Mowing, we're not going to be mowing next week, just so everybody knows, because it's a holiday week and it's a really short week for us. We are going to focus on the leaves so that when everybody has a holiday, they don't have any worries about when they have family over or visitors over, that there's going to be leaf buildup. So that's going to be our priority for next week. Burlaps, if there is a need for burlaps, please reach out to Jake, and Jake will reach out to me. That way we can get to you as soon as possible.
I don't really, I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying. I'm trying to take notes. I got seeding and fertilizing, expansion of the community garden, raking leaves, and no mowing next week, but I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Irrigation crops. Do you want to say something about the dog park?
I got the dog park, yeah.
So we do need to begin to wrap this section up and move on, please. Do we have any specific questions for Eric? We can discuss during the landscape committee report. Eric, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
does anybody, do you see Steve Alterman on? No, all right. Then let's move forward on to our committee reports.
Here we go first. Okay, so for the social committee, I'm going to give a budget update. Thus far for this fiscal year, we've spent $794, which represents 26% of our annual budget of $3,000. So we still have $2,206 to spend through the end of this fiscal year. The only other thing that I have to report about for social committee is we were originally going to have another outdoor movie this month in November, but it fell on that Thanksgiving weekend. And we were worried about low participation due to the holiday weekend. So we're actually going to push it out until Saturday, December 11th, and we're going to play Polar Express. We're going to encourage the kids to come in their pajamas and bring stuffed animals like the movie shows. And we're hoping that we can possibly get Kennedy Wilson to pay for hot cocoa for that event. So it should be a good time. Yes, Gabrielle.
Will we have a double feature like we did last time, maybe one for the kids and the second one a little more adultish?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about a double feature, but it's definitely something that I can ask Maisha about. Okay. That's all I've got.
Landscape.
So I'll talk about a few things, and Carolyn as co-chair could add anything. So the landscape committee, I have several things to work through. Let me go through them real quick. So on irrigation, Kevin Finn has been our irrigation guru. He and I met, and we are trying to schedule a meeting with Brett and Jake to go through the current strategy for irrigation management, fixing things. And we may want to shift our strategy just a little bit because we have only a limited number of free irrigation hours each month, and after that we pay. So we want to talk about focusing irrigation work orders on more high value concerns. And that
That's a high value.
so before we were often looking at irrigation issues where we had water right into the street, that kind of stuff. A lot of that's been worked through. There's still probably more than we'd like, but instead we're going to focus on areas where the irrigation faults are causing plants to die. And so we think we get more bang for the buck by fixing those kinds of sprinkler problems. They're also easier to find because you just keep walking along at the time of day and see a dying dead plant and know there's a problem when it's like the irrigation. So that's what we want to talk to Jake and Brightview about and shift that strategy. But we need to chat about it with landscape committee as well. See if they agree with that kind of strategy. Another topic is ground cover. I think we've reached agreement that mulch will no longer be used going forward for ground cover in the 5-foot defensible space areas throughout the community. And we most likely will be shifting to probably some discussion here on that, some type of stone ground cover. Jake and Brightview and University have picked 5 different ground cover types, colors, basically stone, that they'd like to have the landscape committee look at, and then the HAC, and then the community. Although I haven't figured out how to get the community input from the community looking at those 5 types. They're basically all 3/4 inch, and they're different shades. But the texture of the stone is pretty similar. It's kind of more of a rough texture as opposed to a river rock style. So that needs to be dealt with. And that's also a budgeting issue that needs to be resolved fairly quickly here to figure out as we switch away from mulch, what the budget impact is going to be. Another item is Carolyn's going to be looking at the palette. I know she's had some comments about the first phase of the project and things that we thought could be improved. So she'll be.
Yeah, I'm talking about people change the palette after they sold us the deal.
So we'll get the landscape committee together and see if we can get ahead of the palette selection before the next phase starts. And then finally, and Toby, this might be of interest to you, we're having discussions about adding a 4th phase to the landscaping project, which would deal with how to handle the entire corridor along the DG path beside your home and a whole bunch of others all the way from town center to Channel Islands. Because it's, it's a bit dismal looking, and the question is what can we do that makes sense? Because that corridor is right beside also the open space area that goes through Brushville. So we have to meet, talk through that, and then figure out again what a budget number is to do the whole corridor in a consistent way with a consistent irrigation pattern, all those kinds of things. So it won't happen overnight, unfortunately, but the thought is to take a holistic approach to that whole corridor. Yeah.
I thank you for addressing the fact that there hasn't been any water to the DG path, which is basically my front yard. And to back up a few moments ago, where you had said that you want to extend irrigation resources to the highest relative value, that is a wonderful idea. And if that had happened 3 years ago, I wouldn't have lost 2 trees, 15 bushes, 35 daylily plants, and that's just my house. The neighbors next door just moved. They have lost all of their shrubbery, all of their daylilies. Addressing the water is something that I have brought up for 5 years. We planted 2 strains of shrubs outside my house, only to have them die because there's no water. So thank you for addressing the fact that without water, all of this is a huge waste of time. Thank you for looking into both of those.
So all 4 items that I just spoke to have budget implications. The budget cycle's coming up. Deadline's going to be facing us soon. If we don't get these projects into the budget, or at least think about putting them in the budget, they're not going to happen.
But there was irrigation before, right?
I had irrigation. I had shrubs, trees, plants.
Right, so it should come out of the reserves, because you're repairing something.
Understand that that's still something that plans for, because our reserves are
Right, and I.
fragile.
Hear
They're
you.
fragile.
I will take that, hopefully more fulsome numbers project into the bag and try to put it in either the ongoing operating budget, if that's the appropriate place, or in the reserves, if that's the appropriate.
Yeah, and the reserve is a budget.
What was that? Was that after the 2015 fire that you lost the irrigation?
No, I had irrigation when I purchased my home on July 1st, 2016. I had irrigation, I had trees, I had plants, I had shrubs. This is a 2-hour conversation I'll share with you.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was from the fire.
No.
The point is, your issue is shared by several other homeowners along that whole corridor.
All along the path.
It's a wide swath of land.
And Carolyn, the fire damage is between the path and the creek, and between Long Creek. That's where the less substantial irrigation was destroyed by the fire.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
That's it.
So, garden committee, can we get you to come to the middle? Sorry, it does put you on the camera. I apologize.
So, we have gone over several different plans, Carolyn and I tried to come up with one. Everyone has their own idea. They all kind of ran into problems for one reason or another. Tom gave us some ideas with,
So is this subject garden expensive?
It's a big garden expansion. I'm sorry, the garden expansion with trench plates, which are very expensive. So we're still trying to have other details. So the long and short of it is we have 3 layouts for the expansion. We have staked out 1 layout. We have 2 other layouts we're going to restake tomorrow to see which works best with the existing irrigation, which we really need to find a way to hook up to, and with the fencing that is there and the other amenities like the basketball court and the path that gets used and things like that. So we have 3 plans. We staked those out. We staked out the first one. You might notice the caution tape there. We are partnering with Eric, I think, I don't know if he's still there, I can't see him, this is on, at Brightview, and they are really trying to help us absorb the costs because it's quite expensive. So we could get it back over 400. They're helping to provide us with a similar piece of machinery. It's not quite about how we tried to tell you what it was today. That was pretty good. They're going to help us kill grass. They're going to help us dig up the 1 foot. And then we can purchase the hardware clock. We can save on those other elements. We might have enough to build a freestanding with PVC and hardware clock, 1 cage. Karen shaking her head. We're unsure at this point. Fencing of that magnitude is extremely expensive. We're looking between $5,000 and $10,000. So, and it's not the most effective way to go, as Karen and others have told us it's not the best use for money. Having said that, there are other obstacles that we need to overcome first. And the first one is we need to figure out the plan. We need to spray it with white paint. I have put in for an 811 dig ticket to make sure that all utilities in the area have a chance to come out and look at the dig site. Because even if it's 2 inches down, we have to notify the, whether it's the gas company or the telecommunications, the spectrum, or whatever, they all get a chance to come out and tell us what's under that piece of ground. And then if there is something, we have to use hand tools to dig around it. We cannot use machinery. So I have put in with that, and I'm working with the dig crews to make sure that whatever we do is safe. And that takes time, and they have so much time to respond. So, and they all have to sign on. So we're, we do have time to come up with the structure element of it. And it's like, so part of it
about the additional plots available for spring planting.
We're hoping to start, the ticket is good until the 16th of December. And I believe the utilities have until just a few days before that to sign off. So they have a crew that comes out and looks, and or they just know that they have nothing there, so they sign off. And so, and I think we have until the 28th to dig. And after that, we have to get a new ticket, a new dig ticket. So our plan with Eric was hopefully just start no later than the new year, the dig. But once the dig is done, we kill the grass and we dig, everything else should be fairly rapid.
Oh, how many plots are we talking?
We are hoping for 15 because we will not need an earth garden. We have an earth garden already. We are plotting the same, not the same footprint. There might be a different footprint, not the same size.
So the cost that you're trying to work through right now is just for the 15 expansion. You're not trying to bring the combined part of the garden under one structure.
No.
Okay.
That's
right.
A nice little church.
Yeah. So that's just for the 15.
Yeah, but aesthetically, it would look best if we could have one structure.
So
go ahead, Karen.
let me ask the bag people. So the community garden is currently Ken Wilson's ground sublease as an amenity for their residents. I would guess the new 32 acres, they're going to include the garden in their ground sublease as an amenity. Okay. Yeah, what I'm asking is, we're going to be doubling in size. We'll certainly have some gardeners in that group. Can we get Kenny Wilson to chip in?
I actually got that question last week.
I thought this was coming from all the camp fees budget, and I thought Kenny Wilson pays part of that.
They pay 60% from the apartments, but that 32 acres will not be paid.
15%?
60. Okay, 0.
But this is hopefully trying to get them to chip in more. There's so much money being thrown around the 32 acre project right now. It's like,
I thought the same thing, Tom. And I've been in discussion. Jake and I have been in discussion. Randy and I have been in discussion. And we're hoping to further that discussion.
so anyway, that's just a request of the bag. Raise the issue. We're clearly going to have a resource or an amenity that's not going to be have the capacity, especially when it doesn't now. You bring on, you double the size of the community, clearly it's gonna go along.
I don't know, are they gonna have their own parks? Maybe they'll have their own community.
I don't,
They should have their
I
have a comment.
I don't see any place for a garden like the plot that I printed out.
So, and I think maybe you and I discussed it, but I want to say it publicly. This is it's a lot of money and it's for a few people. And I remember a while back when we had these discussions and it's like, well, we want it to be free because gardening's too expensive and the people that already have their gardens, you know, like it costs $300 or $500. I mean, it's very expensive for that hardwood plot. So I have a problem with paying the CAM fees for 15 people, but I wouldn't have a problem if it were a loan. And if the CAM fees were loaned and then whoever, you know, uses it has to pay $100 or they have to pay a rental fee or something until that money's paid back. But
So you're not having somebody pay that money back and they leave and the new gardener comes in, the loan is gonna pay it off and they don't pay anything?
no, the new gardener pays the same amount. I mean, it's going to take a long time for it to be paid off. But if it were paid off, yeah, then the new gardener wouldn't, well, we have a
Necessarily till then for future, repairs.
what?
If the loan is paid off, we
Yeah.
can then collect money for future repairs.
Yeah, so I think that would be fair to everyone, but I don't think it's fair
But
to have.
remember all the existing gardeners. The original development of the garden was done with CAM money.
Yes, it was.
Right, but how much did it cost? It didn't have, it has a fence, just like the dog park has a fence. That was all that was done, fence and water. This is a lot more. It's a
They didn't
lot.
dig there,
Huh?
they didn't dig up the grass, they didn't dig up, I'm sorry, they didn't dig up the grass.
They didn't do anything. They just put the fence in and then later there was the underground clock, but, but I think it should be, I think everyone, if they want to garden, then they can put a little bit of skin in the game. That's my opinion.
I think part of the issue is that right now it's in Kennedy Wilson's ground sublease. The community garden specifically is mentioned as an amenity, and that their tenants have the right to have access to it, which obviously
Which
they don't, because there's a backlog, but it's a kind of a common amenity, just like the basketball court, which we pay $7,000 for to resurface every 3 years. That's a lot of money too.
Yeah, but technically, Tom, everybody in the community has access to the
I
basketball. court.
understand. I understand.
It's totally different than
Yeah,
the
but
garden where
But people who want to garden shouldn't have to pay the price because there aren't enough slots for everyone. I think it's not fair.
I don't agree with that.
I have been gardening the whole time. I think it's plenty fair. You don't garden.
I don't garden.
You just know.
I garden, and I think that if you want to do a hobby, then you have to pay for it. A swimming pool, a community room, a basketball court, a dog park, any person that lives here can use it. The garden, oh, it's assigned, and that person can stay in that garden forever.
Yeah.
And that's not, I don't think it's a good use of our fees with, unless it's a loan. If it's a loan or something and it's paid back and those people put some skin in the game, then I'm good with that.
My only concern with that, Carolyn, is, what are the repercussions if somebody like decides to stop paying? I mean, are we gonna go and tear their garden?
They pay a certain fee up front to get the plot.
Oh, okay.
So we need to keep moving in order to make our timeline for this meeting. But I will be happy to take the report that's been made and the plans and put this back in front of the bag at their next meeting, which is happening on the 30th of November.
Sounds good. How it is? That's good to know.
Can I ask one more question on the garden real fast?
We have a copy from the available.
So I knew you were saying that the fence for the garden is like super expensive.
The one, the type of chain link fence there's.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you're considering putting a different type of
Yes,
fence.
yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking like, if you guys don't have any fence, how are you gonna protect your?
Right, so we're considering doing something different.
Okay, thanks, that's all I was wondering.
Yeah.
So we'll talk budget before the November 30th.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to say one thing. I think the idea, I would encourage you, because you're putting the bids together.
Yeah.
And you know what the budget is for this year. If, pardon me, because if you know what you want to really do, and there is a way by which Carolyn is offering, saying, if it were a loan and there was a way to pay it off, and we presented that to the BAG committee of saying, this is what we're thinking.
Right.
And this is the way we would get it paid for if it is over the budget.
Right.
And, you know, I agree with you, Carolyn, that it seems to be a good idea to,
Right.
each year there is kind of an annual fee.
Right.
And that if you pay your fee, you get your plot.
Right.
And so
But
that's,
that should be an annual fee to everyone, not just to the new people. And what I heard Carolyn
Right, everyone
proposing
that has
was
a-
just to the new people. That to me seems not an equitable solution. If it is an annual use fee that comes in to help pay the cost of maintenance of that special purpose plot that only a few people use, that makes more sense to me. So I think we just need to talk, and I need something to take to the bag on the 30th of November.
And one other thing is we are trying to reach out to different community members who have certain special skills to try you know, tap into their abilities and all of that.
I like the annual fee, that would solve the problem of people that have a plot that really don't do anything.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, but we have to talk about this.
Gabrielle, I remember the other question I had about the expansion. Are all 13 of those spots already accounted for under the waiting list?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have like 35, maybe more. I hope today. I do understand we have a plot becoming available soon.
Okay.
So, and we keep deferring our plot until the expansion is built.
Okay.
So yes, all 15 are taken, and that will leave us with a wait list of, I believe, 20 to 25.
Great.
Thank you. Kevin isn't with us this evening, so I'm going to go ahead and do the finance committee and ag report. BAG met this week and is beginning the process of putting together the 22-23 budget. We had a fairly long discussion on the level 3 study for the reserve fund that is coming up to be repeated again this year for another set of reserve items. And that's a key, I think, piece of information that everybody should be interested in. As we deal with reserve funds and our expenditures out of reserve funds, we have 2 issues that are perpetually with us. The first is, well, I guess it's 3. Basically, the items in the reserve fund are there because they're in the ground sublease and we're responsible for them. As a community, we're responsible to have reserves for them. There are discretionary decisions under their master ground sublease. Kennedy Wilson has the choice of whether or not they put items in the common area or keep them separately. So we have a conversation with them about the items that they have left in and what they have pulled out and whether or not they're maintaining that description. For example, the room we are sitting in is not in the common area as defined by Kennedy Wilson right now. They have kept this room as something they privately maintain because they are unhappy with the frequency of refurbishment that comes in our general reserve study. So that's just an example of the kinds of things that we look at and review as we look at reserve study items. That I think is key. One of the issues we've had is length of time of an item in the reserve fund. We are currently seeing pool pumps fail much faster than is projected by the reserve funds. And we're seeing some other things, given a length of service that's maybe unrealistic. That we say a screen door is gonna fail in 10 years, and it's really not gonna fail every 20 years. And if it fails every 20 years, then we don't have the budget to replace it every 10. So that we can reduce what we're budgeting for that particular item. So those are the kinds of things that we'll look at in the reserve study in order to figure out whether or not the projections we have right now are accurate or not. The third thing we'll look at is how much we are budgeting for a particular replacement. We have some things, typically the smaller things where those estimates seem to come online, but all of you, I think, who've been active in the community over the last several years understand the struggle we've had trying to get the landscape refurbishing off the ground. Because what was in our reserve study to handle that project's cost did not have, the funds were not adequate to do the job that we thought needed to be done. So we had to find ways to cut that budget and do what we could afford. That is not always the most cost-effective solution to the problem. It's certainly not something we can do when we start replacing underlayments to roofs in townhomes. So that study will begin in December and go on, I guess, begin about the beginning of December and go on for 8 weeks. And I hope at the end of that, we will again have some better clarity around what our reserve fund budgeting needs to look like. That's a key issue that's coming out of the bag and will continue to be worked on inside the bag. If any of you have any particular expertise or input that you want to have for that conversation, especially anybody who knows how we can judge how long our roofs might last, I'm open to all input on this one. Really would like to hear.
You look at the guarantee, buy a roof, it has a 20-year guarantee or a 30-year guarantee. That's how you know.
Well, we have a 25-year guarantee. Well, we had a 20-year guarantee on our roofs, didn't we? It was 20.
So it's a 20-year guarantee. That's how long it'll last.
Well, it's a warranty. We have an estimate that our roofs are supposed to make it 30. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping for 40. Okay, so
I just want to caution, because I've been involved in the reserve study when the new versions first came out. I'll caution against changing the remaining useful life just because we think, well, roof's okay, let's change it to 50.
Yeah.
We're moving the goalpost.
No.
So we need to have a very professional perspective on remaining useful life.
These are not judgments that we make. These are judgments of the consultants we've hired.
I understand.
They bring the recommendations to the table.
But I also know, having dealt with them, they will essentially do what you tell them to do in the end. So I caution, they will, because you pay them and say, look, make it 50. So I just caution against changing the goalpost.
And then I think caution will take it. Get that, yes, ma'am?
I agree with Tom that I have reviewed the reserve studies for this area from 2005 to present. Reviewed them many times. And what I have noticed is that the items in the reserves change. And in 2005, we paid for this. And the study in 2008, we paid for this. So we got items that we, in theory, contributed money for. And then all of a sudden in 2015, those things are gone and people look at the reserve study and they're like, oh, well, we never contributed money for that. Well, we did, because like the lights on the single family homes, we contributed reserve money for that for years and now it disappeared. The landscaping was never in the reserve studies initially. So that's why you didn't have enough money. We had roads in there, that's gone. We had wall, now we have wrought iron fencing in there, but the report's not clear enough to say which wrought iron fencing. I mean, you can't just change the items in the reserve study every time you do a study, because that rips us off. It provides unclear history, and we don't really know what we paid for. And that's the problem that I have. First, we have to develop a list of what should be in the reserves.
And that was done with the 2018 study.
I don't see landscaping in there.
In our first reserve study, there was landscaping in that reserve.
Well,
That's the one we're working on.
Is that the one where the lamps went away? The lamps went away?
Well,
We can't just take stuff out that we already contributed money for.
Carolyn, the money doesn't go anywhere. It gets just shifted over to something else in that reserve. And what happened in 2018, you looked at the ground sublease and in detail sorted out what the ground sublease requires the site authority to pay for it through reserves. And the previous studies of 2005 were wrong. They're just wrong.
Well, maybe they were wrong, but the single family homeowners paid money for the lights. Where did the money go? It's just right there.
Now it got shifted to some other item.
Yeah, but we paid to have our lights replaced, so now we don't have money to have our lights replaced.
But the thing is, the ground sublease puts the burden on the owner as an individual, not as a collective. That's in the ground sublease. So that's the issue. We're trying to follow the ground sublease. And I appreciate the frustration, but that's why we have garage doors. We had a big debate about that. But and the furnaces.
The garage doors and the furnaces, that's townhomes. I don't know about townhomes, but I do know that the single family homes pay for very few things in the reserves for their personal home. And now you guys just disappeared it.
Just
disappeared it.
The money's there.
But we can't use it for our home, and it came out of our money.
You use it for other reserve items for single family.
No, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there for single family home.
Okay, that's no for.
so let us take that particular issue. But what Tom has elucidated is that the way we decided what to ask the consultants to do their research on were the items that are listed in the ground sublease. If an item is missing, it doesn't mean that a group couldn't come back and say, we'd like to see this added. If the group wants to do it as a whole, and then we figure out how to do that. I think that's a conversation that can certainly be had, especially on one item that I think we could make an aesthetics argument about why it should be done in common and not individually.
Well, I just think we have to respect the history, Sandy. Like you said, you have to respect the history, and you have to respect that certain things went into the reserves to pay for certain things, and you can't just say, oh, that money's going for something else. We don't know what it is.
So there are some larger issues around reserves. And I think the largest issue that's out there around reserves that we should all be aware of is that Carolyn mentioned that roads used to be in our reserves, and that's because our reserves were not just our community's reserves. They were really reserves of the University Glen Corporation. And the University Glen Corporation was responsible for a whole lot more than just us. And that included the roads. Now, there's an infrastructure reserve issue that information is not clearly stated or necessarily yet available to us that we continue to work. And that is to find out what is infrastructure, what is the site authority directly reserving for, not through us, and how does that impact the community? And those issues are also being put on the table as we work through this this level 3 study, because it is, Tom and I started asking these questions, I don't know, 4 years ago. And I have hope that as we continue to ask this year, that we're in a climate where we have a much better shot at getting answers.
But I hope when we get the answers, that it's written down in agreement with the site authority.
I think everything needs to be in writing. I would agree wholeheartedly with that. So that concludes the general committee reports.
Okay, so for CAD, apologies, I was unable to make it to the last CAD meeting. I got stuck on a business call. But I did join the UPAC meeting since our last HAC meeting, and we discussed the possibility of adopting students left behind in the dorms for the holidays. I put that in the newsletter, so if anybody has interest in being involved in that, please reach out to me. We haven't really figured out how we're gonna do it exactly yet, but somebody from the university has been in touch with me, and we're gonna try and work on the details. I don't know whether or not this is gonna be a social committee project or not, but there should be no budget for it because it'll be all on a voluntary basis. So if anybody's interested in that or has ideas on how to execute on that, let me know. Does anybody have anything else for me to take to the next CAG meeting?
No, but question, you mentioned a UPAC meeting?
Yeah,
Was that the one at the university?
University Police Advisory Committee.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm assigned to that. It's not really, I guess, formally part of the HAC, but I'm assigned to that meeting.
How often is that held?
Monthly. We were on hiatus for the summertime, but it's resumed as of, I think, September, and so we're back on track.
And then something that I'll just.
Okay. Perfect.
Super. Jake, you're up.
Just a couple of items. I wanted to let everybody know that where we are on the tot lot, that the contract is signed. And that the anticipated, the date that we've agreed that is kind of the drop dead date is March 30th. We're hopeful that it will be prior to that, but that is the date that the contract that we offered, that it would be built and ready to go.
Jake, that was the start date?
End date. That's the drop dead date. That they will be done by then.
We might actually see people working sooner than that, a lot sooner. I have my fingers crossed, lots sooner.
So that's that. I did want to mention regarding specifically the budget comparison for the month of October. There were in the budget, it was anticipated for October was $149,263,025, and ends up that we spent. The actual was $149,698.21. So there was a variance of $434, which is a very small amount. So that's where we are in regard to that. I think everybody's hit pretty much everything else. The one thing the landscapers did not mention was the dog park. The renovation of the dog park. We opened the part that had been cordoned off for the refurbishing, and we left the fence in, and now the two entrances are being used with the double gates, and the back side is locked off so that the grass can grow. And hopefully this time of the year, the germination should be relatively quick. And so rather than 6 months, we're hoping that it'll come back in 6 weeks or 2 months. And so in the spring, we hope that the entire dog park will be open, the entire large dog park will be open. Yes.
Have we looked at more dog-resistant turf at all? Is there such a thing as more dog-resistant turf?
Not really.
Kind of having a real hard time hearing you guys. With
I
your
know.
mask on. I can't hear you. You're having a conversation, but I can't hear you.
Okay,
I
okay,
can't hear you.
We're
You're
trying
6
to make
feet
it
apart.
work.
You're 6 feet apart.
we're good. Okay, we acknowledge it. Okay. And so that's what's happening with the dog park. So that's one phase of the refurbishing is done, and we moved into the second phase. So those are pretty much, those are the details that weren't covered by other people. Yes?
Several questions. In terms of our budget, actual budget, so year to date, are we close? Because I think you were just talking about the current month, right?
I would say, yeah, I can.
Okay, and
Very close.
while you're looking at that, is there, you always have some things, or typically have something way over budget, something under budget. Is there anything over budget to the point where you're concerned about it?
No,
Trash, everything's kind of tracking?
everything's pretty much where we expected it to be. I know with some of the increases, like for instance, some of the townhouse insurance, we knew it was a higher premium.
Just with inflation, I'm concerned some of that's going to come our way soon.
Okay, right, but right now that it doesn't appear to be excessive or something we need to report.
So year to date, we're kind of in the same situation, fairly close?
Year to date, yes.
Expenses, okay. So let me, I'm sorry. Can I ask about two more questions? Okay. So for reserves, did we get our second installment for the town hall reserve?
I believe the second. You mean
We were supposed to get
the
3 payments, the annual payment.
The annual.
Last year it came around this time of year. Has it come yet?
We have not done the reconciliation for the first quarter, and it would show up in the first quarter.
So you don't know yet,
I have not seen it. It has not hit the books that I'm aware of.
but it should be coming.
It should be coming. Yeah, hundreds of thousands.
We came in the first quarter last year.
Right.
We just have lost the reconciliation
All right, just
facilitator.
don't want to lose track of that.
Well,
You need it.
we lost the reconciliation facilitator, so the information getting to us has slowed.
Okay.
Because we're like down staff.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good on budget stuff for now.
Okay.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have 2 more questions. So,
Who are you talking to?
yeah,
I'm not running.
you're a good question asker, so I don't want to. So I noticed on the way out that there's a new irrigation standing pipe at the entrance to the 32 acres standpipe with a hose on it, I'm sure to keep the dust down, all that. Can they put a separate meter on that? Because I don't think we should pay for that water.
Yes, good idea.
And actually, that's it.
Good point. I'll get on that tomorrow.
And if there's any increase in the water, they have to pay because we know our historical use, right?
I don't think our rates are volume driven. It's not like it's tiered. We pay a flat rate whether we use a lot
Actual
of
volume, how much this year compared to last year, when they start doing the water.
It should be about the same. Right? If it's,
one more thing.
we usually pay 50,000 a year. If it goes up to 80, they pay 30, right?
I can tell you that I sat in a meeting here with the contractors pre-construction, and that the dust mitigation measures that are in effect are using reclaimed water.
Right.
So it's not coming out of potable, it's reclaimed, and I believe it's all being.
Well, they need a meter to track it. There's only one way to track water usage. They should have.
So the question would be is what is the hose that's connected to the hydrant for?
I see a new pipe that's up there, it's a purple color for irrigation water.
Okay.
There's actually a fire hose hooked to it this morning. So I'm assuming that's their dust mitigation water. So they just slap a meter on it, that's all.
Okay.
And then obviously adjust the billing, needs to go to the billing folks. Deduct that from what we pay. I'm done, thank you.
You have one more question?
No.
You said you had two.
I did. I already asked the first one.
All right.
I'm old, come on. Give me a break. I'm gonna be lucky if I remember how to call.
Is there anything else we need to handle? Any other issues that needs to be brought up before we move to public comment?
Are we talking about new items now?
Yep.
No. No.
We're good. Then do we have anyone other than Toby signed up to speak? Okay. Toby, you're on.
I sent a letter to the site authority members asking for a clarification on the ground sublease. Whether something costs $1 or $1 million, it's either correct and appropriate, or it is not correct and inappropriate. So I sent a letter to them stating that I do not see references to a community garden. I do not see references to a social club. I do not see references to mediation. If I don't see those things in my ground sublease, and those items are not normal, customary, it seems to me that you couldn't fund something that either isn't contractual or normal and customary. So I asked the site authority to clarify those three categories for me. And their reply was that through Offerman, that they would like to handle everything at the lowest possible level of administration. So I have received the suggestion that I should come to the HAC and bring my concerns to you. So my concerns are, I respect volunteers, I respect everything you're doing, but I think you should have a clear description of whether something is appropriate and lawful and contractual or not. I thought the site authority would just review this and say, yes, that's possible, no, that's possible, that's not possible. So I'm bringing it to you because I think as volunteers, it should be important for you to be doing something lawfully or contractually, whether it's $1 or $1 million. I don't want you to expose yourself as volunteers to any harm in the future. And also, if you have a consensus among people who are not skilled in a particular mode, such as common area developments, tenants in common, HOAs, they also have a basis of what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. So if you're allotting money to a category, and then Drake is dispensing money based on the budget, it seems like you're exposing people, and you should have a definite answer right that you have the ability to fund those projects. And what's happening is, I was part of the social committee when it was initiated. And it was a bunch of people in the community who decided to have a holiday party. And we all brought food, and somebody brought this, and somebody brought that. And we decided that we had such a good time that we would like to continue it. There was never an intention on any of our parts for it to be funded. It was supposed to be a social club. So the social club is something I don't think should be funded. I don't see it in my ground sublease. It's not common or acceptable in the type of organization that we have. The second point is the garden club, where for a decade, many people, and you would have more knowledge than I, you tended your own plots, you vet your own soil, you played for your own things. And yes, a lot of people would like to garden, but apparently they'd like to garden if it's paid for through canned. I don't agree with that. For 10 years, people carried their own weight. They pulled their own weight, and they did that as a hobby. And we will never be able to let everyone garden who would like to garden. So those two items, followed by the third, which is there's in the budget mediation money. Mediation is not my ground sublease. I never agreed to mediation. You will not force me to mediation. And if you turn it upside down and say that mediation, should mediation have been on the ground sublease, the characteristics of it is the parties would pay the fees, not the CAM. So we've got CAM, we've got Garden Club, we've got Social Club, and that's a minimum $13,500 to an organization that has a, and I love that word because I couldn't figure out the correct word. We have a fragile budget. Our reserves are fragile. And I have a lot of people, I expected the site authority to just quickly answer, yes, things can happen, no, they can't. But they want to force it back down to this level and not be involved in it. So I'm thinking that you folks should ask someone for a written designation, whether you have the right to spend common area maintenance money on a garden club, a social club that shows movies and hands out Snickers bars. And I'm not saying that people don't enjoy that. I'm not saying that it was done with a bad heart, but it's not something that's normally funded. A CAM association does not need a PR manager. It does not need any type of promotion. We need to focus on the fact that some people have patches of dirt, they should have plants. The various comments I've received from people are, anyone who comes home to a foot or more of leaves on their doorstep, anyone that has waited over 3 years for the top lot due to lack of funding, anyone that has bare dirt where landscaping should be, anyone who must water the plants surrounding their home because the irrigation has failed, anyone that's concerned that the town reserves are not acceptable for an aging community. People want to focus on what's important. And if I can bring things to a holiday party, that's my choice. But these funds should not be taken out of common area maintenance, which is meant for the care and growth of the community. So I went back and researched, and on January 16th of 2020, the minutes read, Kevin Olson stated there's a social events committee which was approved in December. That's news to me. We had a group of people, over 20, who came in this building and had a buffet. The social events committee is led by Naisha Olson, Kevin's wife. Olson offered the attendees that if anyone would like to be involved, to contact the CAM office. Then a couple residents asked where they would get information on this and how it would work. And then it goes on to say, Toby Wheeler asked if the CAM office had already added the social events committee to the budget. Friesen stated that it had been added to the 2019 and added to the 2020 projected budget. Wheeler does not agree with the social events committee budget if it interferes with the budgeting for the improvement of our homes and land. Friesen agreed. Mandium agrees with Wheeler. Powell and Mandium asked what will happen to funds that are budgeted that are not used. Friesen stated that if there's a balance, then it goes back into the reserves. If there's a deficit, then it would be absorbed by that deficit. Mandium asked if there was a deficit. Friesen stated there is a deficit at the present time. Mandium, which is Simon, for those of you who don't know his last name, stated that funds don't need to be used for us to have a social gathering, and further asked how we were able to get the room. And it was announced that ES Ring donated the use of the room for our fund. So we've got a committee that wasn't supposed to have funding based on the people who founded it. Now it has funding. We're showing movies. I don't know how many people attend, but it doesn't seem like something a common area maintenance fund should be paying for, nor Snickers bars. And to see the goodie bags and their fancy little Halloween bags and spending money, I don't care if it's $1 or $1 million. If you don't have the right to spend it, you shouldn't be spending it. And there's a lot of people in the community who are upset about things like how long the top mark days, how some people have lawns that aren't mowed for 7 weeks. I'm leaving myself out of it because you already know my landscaping is hell. People who can't get their garbage cans from between the townhomes because the shrubbery has grown so much that the garbage can, so people are cutting their own shrubs. People are raking their own leaves. I have 5 pictures of the South End of people cleaning up their doorstops. I don't want to see a movie. I want my leaves there. So that is what I would like to share. I think you should have a definitive action that you can either spend this money or you are not allowed to spend this money.
Thank you very much, Tony. We appreciate it, hearing your comments.
Can I ask a clarification just so we hopefully make this quick?
Sure.
So your objection is to the social committee and the garden club?
The social committee and the garden club, which is also
And
referred
the
to.
mediation, it's all in that
mediation.
contingency line
Okay.
of the budget.
And what has infuriated everyone is
I
that
don't
they
know
weren't
how I got
identified. They were not identified as social club, garden club, mediation.
Okay.
It was hidden under contingency.
Okay.
And after I complained about it at the last meeting, I've noticed online now there is a line that says community. But there are 2 lines for exactly $10,000. And I really don't know what either of those are. But again, I don't think you should be spending my money on a movie. Thank you.
Did you change the budget?
Thanks, Toby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate everyone coming. We appreciate everybody online hanging out with us. Do we have anyone? If not, we stand adjourned.